Hello everyone and welcome to Gierok Farms. In today's video we're going to talk about all the buildings here on the farm. We get a lot of comments about them, especially our new shed, so eventually we'll go down there and show that. We want to talk about how they were built, the concepts behind them when they were built, and some of the engineering that went into that and things we would have done differently or what we would change with all the buildings on the farm. So I got Dad with me today. He's gonna cover some of that and his thought process through the years of what he liked and what he didn't like. In case we ever got to build a shed again, we've been stewing on ideas that we would do differently. So we're gonna cover that today. So thank you all for watching. We're gonna start here with our newest building on the farm, the heifer shed, the dry cow shed.
Basically, we call it the bull barn. That's just how we reference it. To back up a little bit, so when my wife and I came here, there's only two original structures still here. The dairy barn, of course, with the milk house, which was virtually fully remodeled inside and out. And then our shop building was just a dirt floor, of course, with steel doors. And maybe we'll throw some pictures up of some of the early years when we just came here. But everything else you have seen in these videos as far as structures, we have personally built. We've hired very little as far as crews to help us put this stuff together. This building here, I did have 2/4 man crew through a portion of it until we ended up getting the roof on, and then we kind of took it from there when it came to doors and manger and all that. I always like to give it a lot of thought. 6 months to a year, or I always even telling Aaron here now, if you'd get your own place and you'd say, yeah, I'm going to change this and make that, I always say farm it for a while, work with what you got for a while, driving around in between the buildings, and then as time goes on and once you make a full year going through all the seasons, your ideas will change. Where the snow is going to be piled up, where the water's going to want to run, and you're going to say, no, we can't put this here because that's going to interfere with that over there, and so on and so forth. So even here, after we were here a couple years, my ideas really started changing a lot. And then of course there used to be an old building here that was about half the size of this. We added on to it 3-4 times. And then it got to a point where it just wasn't gonna never be better than, we couldn't make it what we really wanted. And it was already starting to needing some more repairs again because of cattle and all those type of things. So this was what, back in 2020, I think we did this one.
Right before COVID hit is
Yeah,
when this building was built.
We got kind of lucky with the lumber prices. So we went down to our local lumber outfit here where they build the rafters in our small town and everything, these lamb pie rafters. And I can never say enough about this. The guys that owned this all, my wife and I actually went to school with these guys, so it's kind of neat to have that. You can drive quite a ways up through the Midwest and they're out there and all, mostly in barns, but because of the no webbing. No place for the birds, get extra height, and I'm not sure their widths. They maybe go up to 72 feet.
I've even seen them like a really small garage where it's had
Right.
this, actually. They cover a wide range.
And they'll custom, that's the neat thing. They'll custom. So like here, now getting to a lot of thoughts. Okay, a drive-through manger type thing. So a rafter ends here, and then there's 4-foot extensions on here. Typically, this post, like just a standard pole shed, would be right out on the end of this rafter. You'd basically notch your post, and that rafter would sit in that saddle, and you'd bolt that to it with another plank on the outside edge. We'll maybe give you a closer up look how that is constructed from the other side. But anyway, he said we could actually extend that out up to a full 12 feet over our mangers. Now, if we had more room here, we would have did that. We'd have built everything wider. I did express that in other videos, that there's always a lot of comments of why wouldn't we have done this or done that, and there's just no room. So one thing you got to keep in mind when you're viewing a lot of our stuff is these cameras have a tendency to make things look bigger, wider, further away, and which is okay. Just take it in consideration when you're kind of observing what we're up to. But yeah, so then I spent many days after chores and stuff just coming back over to this old building, and I even had spray paint, and I think there's even some here that, so some of the concrete was here with the old building, and we were trying to match so we didn't have to rip out everything, but you can see this pink little strip of concrete or paint here, and that's where I thought if we build the way we built here, that's about where my water will be dripping off, and Then I got to look, okay, how much room am I going to have in here to get through machinery for other things and get to that building, you know, because once you start pouring concrete, you're kind of committed. You can't, you know, you don't want to back up. It starts getting costly. It's hard to get the imagination until it's all there ready. A lot of walking around with a tape measure, and then even like I wanted this so my chopper boxes that are forage boxes are filled with corn stalks, and I'm able to actually literally drive right through and unload them right into the bedding pack if I wanted to. Now, I didn't want to revolve this whole building around that, but that did determine, instead of just going like 11 feet or 10 feet, why not just go the full 12, just so those boxes get in, because that's probably about this big a piece or tall of equipment. And then it has, like you've seen when we were cleaning out the bedding pack, you know, it's how you backing right in with that manure spreader, get right in here, get right next to it, not be driving with one scoop at a time, you know, with these 10, 12 loads of manure. It's all, again, I couldn't do that with the old building.
So to cover the bare bone dimensions, if people are wondering, what's the length, what's the width, what's the height?
We're 90 feet, and again, we had to really nip and tuck just to be sure we didn't interfere with the water runs, and we're 90 feet by, well, if you go, the rafters are 40 footer, so I want to think we're 36 from post to post. So the cattle are 90 by 36, divided into roughly 2 large pens, which can be petitioned into more. You see the gates on the back wall, that is mounted to the back wall, and that was another thought where I had to make sure I had a pipe in the concrete wall for that lower hinge, you know, to drill through concrete ahead of time. So as all this stuff was somehow planned out, so as we were putting the forms up, so I had those options. And then we're at 8-foot spacings, which these rafters are designed for a full 12 foot. So that all, they just told us, well, how much load do you want? I mean, it's been, I don't know if it's been less than 10 years ago, we've had a lot of snow. There was a lot of structures going down because of it. So then we got kind of scared and decided maybe another $1,000 we had to add another rafter or whatever it cost. It wasn't a lot more to give it, let's say, more insurance that this is less likely to happen.
So everything's 8 foot except for
the door.
here.
Yeah, we wanted to put a side door in, which is 10 foot, and I thought 8 would be a little bit tight, so that's mostly just skid steered, move cattle through. So in the summer that's open, and we do run gates along there so that we pile hay in here, and we could do round bales and cornstalk bales and all that, however, whatever you feel you need to do. So this whole bunch is on pasture over summer, so again, and then we have younger animals in here which have more room, and then there's less cleaning to do and more freedom that way they got for the summer. But yeah, so that's it. Pretty much 90 by 36, and then we got 8 foot here hanging over the manger, 2 foot overhangs on the other 3 sides. And part of the reason for that was, again, to keep the snow back from the doors and different things. This is our north side. Any good cold blustery winter days at night, this door gets shut. I got different latches on there. If you go way back, if you scroll way back, I don't know, we put a video together on the details of
all
this
the
whole
small things. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's and they got a lot of views. I was quite impressed how people, and maybe someone that's thinking of constructing something like this could get some ideas off it. But up in there, just to give it more of a look, or of what would you call it, nostalgic.
Yeah.
Or, you know, but that's white oak, more character, white oak boards, and we do got a marine varnish on them, several coats of that. And again, it's getting in for, maybe needs another coat, but we don't have to necessarily babysit that wood, being that overhang is in here. And what that took is this front rafter to be able to be dropped down, so that purlon, that one that runs this way, was able to go on top of that. So it's not just, oh, let's just put on an overhang. It has to be planned out ahead of time so it actually works with the way the building is constructed. And then for strength, there was a lot of different ways we could attach that on there. I like this one the best. It seemed like it would have the most strength, where if we did have some wild storms, it would probably hold up.
And then for height, on the edge of the rafter where it meets the pole, how tall are we there?
We're 12 feet here. Between this barn and the calf barn to 12 feet, which is probably more than sufficient. So when you get your loader up in there, see, a lot of times, this is a prime example, these animals. So let's say we want to bed these cattle. And we got other cattle over there in our side lot. So, well, we don't really want to have to chase them out of here, but I'll get the loader up in the air with that bale. And I've seen it so many times in other people's barns. You look up and the rafters are broke or the door jambs are bent or whatever because they hit it with the bale. So when you're lower, you always, so 12 feet seems about right. So I get it above the cattle. So then I can see where I'm going, but I'm not too high, and I'm high enough for the building. And
then center height to that rafter will probably be
another, well, we're probably 15, 16 feet all the way to the point, being that's lamp high with the arch.
Yeah, so you gain some height there with that rafter, and then also I've heard from guys that the lamplight, you're not getting birds hanging out in your building. There's not a roost there.
There's not a place for them to necessarily put a nest where you got the webs, and then air flows better, and that's kind of their sales pitch a lot too. But I think for cattle barns, I would like to say, unless you got some sort of steel or something, but I think this lamb ply around here is kind of the Cadillac, and
less dust, less mess up there.
And like if we want to pile hay in there, put some kind of conveyor in there, whatever. Yeah, they're not in the way. You got an extra. If you can get through the door, everything else clears inside. So like our machine shed stuff, we go 14, and it's getting to the point where the combines and stuff are getting so big that they're already going 60. It's just kind of getting to be a standard thing. If it's going to be a modern day shop, you're going to go 60. Anytime you go higher, bigger, you got other variables, so then you got costs of steel, to cover everything. Really, your roof is the heart of your whole structure as far as, we were just kind of talking about if we were to put up another building, that's really the biggest cost. And now, like with us with the sawmill, I would probably recommend just going boughten lumber for the roof, considering that it won't shrink. And then nail, if you nail steel to green lumber, the shrinkage, I've heard it in the past where you can have some issues afterwards and that. But a side material, probably not so fussy, probably can get away with some of that.
So there's a little bit of our newest shed, our newest pole barn on the farm here. And then here's one of the older pole barns.
This one Mother and I put up in, this is the first building I built myself. We came here in 91. Fall of 93, we put this together. And it got to be a bit overwhelming. We got kind of lucky. We had some European help that was visiting my wife's family, and these two young guys, and they were really great about being part of this whole thing and getting the roof on and everything. So, and again, looking at other dairies around us that had similar type setups, we wanted here where we could, for instance, and you guys seen in our videos where we got all the swinging gates. There's basically 6 pens. Right now we got it divided into 4, but we got that partition in there. So you can swing the gates as you go, and the cattle are locked back onto the bedding pack, clean out your alley, and then reverse the whole thing if you want to clean out or rebed your bedding pack again. The cattle aren't run, what do you do with the animals when you have to do this? It's a huge, huge thing. And you're talking on this farm, on average now, especially over winter, twice a week, which can take a lot of time up. And this way, like my wife, she just loves the job of moving the gates, and we basically don't have to really discuss it anymore. Everyone knows what to do, and it's almost a routine where the one person keeps moving the gates, and then maybe where I go with a load of manure, that other person will move all the cattle back over to the other side, or something in that order. When I'm going to get a bale of stocks, by the time I get back, that's all. Now that's time over 30 years is a lot. That's other things you could be doing, or maybe where you can prevent having as much hired help around.
Just more of the many ways how we've made this farm more efficient, or how Dad has made it more efficient. But touch on more of the building side of things. The same rafters.
Yep.
But
it's the same rafters in there. It's a 412 pitch, if anyone's wondering, and that's kind of standard around by us for pole sheds. I think if you get further south, they probably, because they don't have the snow, they may not be as. And this company would make them whatever you want. You could make them steeper too, and what ends up happening is just like anything, when it comes to be more specialty, it costs more.
Yeah. But then spacing for rafter in this shed versus the other one, we're a bit longer.
We're at 12, and if I had to do it again, we would go at least we'd maybe go 10, maybe we'd go 8, just for the insurance of it all. And back when we built this, we didn't have no money. I mean, we were starting out. This was a quite an undertaking for us to purchase all the gates and waters, and everything had to be concreted, and we didn't regret doing any of it. But now, after years and years of using it, for instance, that building, the bull barn, is built to grade. From the low end to the up end, there's over 4 feet in there. So everything is leveled this way. All the posts are straight up and down. They're not slanted with the grade, but the grade is 4 feet, and the naked eye doesn't really see it unless you're looking for it. And that way we were able to avoid banks and
having to do a lot of excavating and yeah.
And to make it fit the yard.
Yeah, we'd wreck our yard.
It would be a lot harder to fit it in, and that way we were able to go with the terrain we already had. And then after farming around that one now, and then of course there's good drainage in there. If we were ever to have one of these water cups, for instance, leak or something, it runs away. It doesn't just make a big swimming pool in your pen. In cattle pens in general, you want that. And the cattle to have that little bit of grade is, you know, that's like in a machine shop of some sort where you needed to work on a level surface, or I think that would interfere with that. You may want to have it almost as perfectly flat as you can get it. Where there, it's better to have the slope. So yeah, if I had to do this one again, that would definitely be one thing I would have done. I probably would have tried to go a little wider. You know, on this side is what we call the small side. We used to have individual calf huts here. For about 10 years we had that. And then we went to the super hut. We realized the calves that were better off more in the outside, not between the larger cattle as much.
Ventilated.
Yeah.
As for dimensions with this barn, so how wide are we? How long are we? How tall are we?
Okay, so 12-foot sidewalls, 40 feet wide. And this first part up until the wall where the hay is there is 60 feet, and then another 24 was added on. That's pretty much it. But from the front corner to the back corner, there is some grade in the concrete where maybe we're only at 11 in the back here, which again, it just gives us a little bit of slope. That's pretty much what we got going on here. And then of course, all the openers for ventilation. I think I only had every other one I had where I could open those vents. And then after 2 years only, I was cutting them holes open and making more. And then same up here, this is my design. In fact, our rafter company came out here to take photos of this after we put this together, and then tried to sell this to other farmers where they could actually construct the rafter. Now what we did, and I think you can probably kind of see here, we added on a 2x6 extended out. I think it's three more feet past the peak. And this faces, and that way's east. Our weather almost always comes from the northwest in this valley. So that was a concern of mine. What if the weather came from the other way? There's a large hill behind here besides, but there's maybe only 2 snowstorms I remember where a reasonable amount of snow came in that kind of, you know, required some cleanup in here. Other than that, it's virtually nothing. And I don't regret doing that, because that was a tough thing to do. I thought, how are we gonna close that up if that becomes the issue? And I've thought of different ideas, and so we had almost 30 years in this building before we built that one, and that one's virtually laying the same direction as this one. But anyway, so we kind of imitated the same thing, except on that building, I had them build the rafter with that in it already, so that we didn't have to add that. This was more of an afterthought after the rafters were built. And then again, cattle buildings, I would highly recommend, like we did over there, putting your posts on top of some sort of concrete wall. Whether it's a 4-foot wall or a 2-foot wall where the mangers are. And then, being that we got a sawmill now, we were kind of talking about this too. We probably wouldn't have to necessarily have treated posts, which they cost a fortune. We would be able to just take oak out of the woods and maybe even have a stronger building.
Yeah, if you keep those posts out of the dirt and out of the manure.
Out of the grade.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
And that's just it. There's probably no requirement for them to be treated, except where they get close to the bottom, you know, where they go.
Yeah, so let's move on to some of the other sheds, but that's a glimpse at the oldest pole barn on the property. All right, we're in the main shop here now. We do have a video where we went more in detail with this entire build, along with the tool storage as well. So we'll throw that up on the screen if you want to go watch that one.
Yeah, and there I go through the whole thing. Yeah, and it's got the spray foam on it. So again, this was one of the 2 original buildings that were here that are still left, and it was what they call a Quonset. And again, it's that laminated rafter, and it's basically glued together strips of boards. I want to think it's maybe a 7 inch, maybe a 7 inch. I don't know. They do different thickness. It's made by the same company that makes that lamb ply truss. So the bottom cord on that lamb ply is very similar to what's in here. And there was a lot of these put up back in the 70s into the early 80s. And I think far as economics of getting a lot of buildings, a lot of space for the money, it probably was your better way to go. But then the downside is with the slope walls, like, you're not able to drive or put larger, taller things along the wall. And then the other thing, like my shelving and stuff, you know, you couldn't really use that curved wall. I kind of was stuck using the gables for that, so it limits you a little bit.
Having a Quonset definitely dates your yard. I don't know of anyone that's put up a brand new Quonset.
Kind of went out, yeah. And
the closest thing now, I think, would be those hoop barns, those temporary barns, but otherwise.
And then there's some steel ones. I mean, they're all steel. They're bolted together, really. And I don't know, I've seen some guys turn those into some kind of shop type things. I think a lot of it is just the fact that the walls are curved makes it very difficult to put other things in it, you know, or make it work for a shop, or depends on how you're gonna, you know, even like the overhead doors and stuff, you can't just lay a level against it, you know, it interferes with all that. In this building, I gotta say too, it's real funny, and again, and I always knew this was, so there was a concrete footing originally, so this whole thing is standing on a concrete footing, and they just had a dirt floor, but from the front footers to the back, it was 18 inches. When he threw the transit on it, I thought, wow, that's a lot. And then I thought, how are we gonna do this floor? Are we gonna try to, you know, build it up in the back or dig it down in the front? And then of course with the yard and everything, that would have been just crazy. We'd have kind of ruined other things. So I decided, let's just keep the slope in there. And then I was concerned it was gonna interfere with our everyday using it, you know, because you got this slope. You think, you know, if you'd unhook like a running gear in here, it's gonna start coasting. Most stuff is on a jack, or again, for a farm shop and what we do with it, I do not regret doing it this way now. Driving a manure spreader, let's say we got snow and ice and everything dripping off the skid steer and everything, that all melts. It trickles right down the center, out underneath the back door, it goes. We do not need a drain in here. Where they build the level ones, I've seen it where even as perfect as they are, there's puddles.
Yeah, it pools up, hangs out in there.
And again, I think it depends, for a farm shop, if I had to do it again, I would still, I maybe wouldn't go 18 inches, but I'd still give it some grade, just because. So that's the general thoughts of this building.
We'll move on to our back pole shed, which is more of just equipment storage right now, or hay storage. So this is the main cold storage here in the yard. And this would have been built what year?
96. To remember, we got about $9,000 in this all together. All the roof is new, 40-foot rafter again, 14-foot sidewalls, 12-foot spacings, 72 feet long. I think our door is 17 feet here, 2 sliders. I did something a little different here. Maybe you should show this one. We always had trouble with these doors doing this in the wind. And it didn't matter what kind of latch, and you can see how banged up they got. But I don't know, I just got some scrap steel. And this, one of the guys, when we built the other shed, had this great idea. He said he's seen it where there's actually a post with a hole drilled in it. And then down further, I do get some other holes, so if there's water in there, it can somehow leak out. But I got these big eyelets here, and I'm able to, you know, and this just happened. This is off some old machine, but again, it's a real simple thing to pull that up. Now, I only do it with the one half. Then the other half, again, I just found some scrap steel, and this could be better. This is just afterthoughts. Even these handles, we made them ourselves. I mean, our outfit down there that sells material can sell you these little handles. They'll charge you $50 for something that you could make for $5 and be stronger and better. I mean, any little fabric, but it's simple. You can have gloves on and not have... It's more just the wind, the storm. It's not sealed really, because I mean, but it's just, I've seen these flying like up in the wind with the, it was wild. We need to tie them down. So that's a little of that, and I do got that in our other new shed on both ends. It's a little better design, I guess you could say. Here too, we did a lot more just this here material. What we were thinking is I may want to use this building for cattle. Now where I grew up, this is what they call center match. This is treated. It wasn't all that expensive back then. They don't really sell this like they used to, but it's very expensive to buy that. You're almost better off to just go concrete right away and get a get a more sturdier, but it does add a lot of strength. So the steel on the side don't have to go all the way down. And then we did, because we had 12-foot spacings, we did put, I want to think these are maybe 8-footers. We dug in between each one, just simply because if I use it for cattle, we're going to need more, which we never did have cattle in here. And I did put a side door in, which again, right now this door gets mostly used just to add some light and some ventilation if you feel you need it. It's again, was just a thought to, and we did put some skylight stuff in, which they're fiberglass. There is actually, maybe I would have to say there's virtually no longevity in that stuff, I want to say. That was more of a 70s idea. I know a lot of guys would put those in the roof.
No, it's a bad idea.
That was a bad idea. They were in my shop when I came here, and there were holes in them right away. We pretty much just bought some steel and put it in that place of that.
But while we're talking about skylights in some of your other buildings, like the calf barn and the new shed, which you'll see, you put, that's like a, what they call that, a poly? Or what would they call
it's
that?
like a PVC. The name of it at that time, what they called it, Sun Tough, and I suppose it depends on who builds it, what they call it. But it's a better product. But even then, the sun breaks it. It gets yellow, and it gets dirty. It's all about letting in the daylight. So when you got the doors shut and stuff, you don't, you want some daylight in, even in here. It lets enough light in so you can see what you're doing. To put actually glass windows in or something in that order, they're going to be broke.
Yeah.
It's not going to.
But as for ever putting it on a roof, I would highly advise not to do that.
It just seems, anytime, even on a house or anything, anytime you can avoid putting a hole through the roof, whether it's a chimney, any type of venting, whatever it is, or even screwing antennas to the roof or anything, you're always better off to somehow brackets off the sides, or, if you can get it to work that way, because if it's going to leak, that's where it's going to leak. It's just a given through time, and some things you have to do it that way. It's the only real practical way to do it. But anytime you can avoid, it's even like our granary. We put the grain in through the side, the gable. I've never seen a granary that didn't leak, because that hole on top where their conveyor would go through would always be something that was full of holes from all sorts of years of use. So here, we kind of got lucky here where one of my dad's friends, they had some type of wind damage on their Quonset barn. We were able to get the old steel from that. And I think just for a few $100, we ended up with enough steel to go all the way around this building, which was in reasonably good shape yet, just for a machine shed, so to speak. It's just galvanized color, and then we did buy some red trim just to give it a little something. And it's funny, the trim costs more than the steel that goes all the way around this building. That's just the wild thing of this world today. The fancy stuff it's almost ridiculous. I mean, even here, the way the doors. And now that we're back here, this plate here, we can buy these plates in Menards or where they sell your construction for this stuff. This is just some Valley steel, and I think, that we just cut and then some roofing nails. So I feel that there's hundreds of dollars worth of stuff I didn't have to buy. That I just had to take my tin snips and take a little time and create and
save some money where you can.
Yeah, and this is 96, and it's holding up as good as anything. It's not that it's not good. It's just, it's not even saving money. It's money you don't have to make or come up with, So that's better yet.
Yep. As for the overall dimensions of this building, what are we looking at?
72 by 40 by 14 foot. That's what this is. And then in 09, we did add a lean-to where I'm storing my sawmill now.
Wow.
And in hindsight, again, which is always 50-50, if I had to go back, and we were just talking about this yesterday, I would have probably put a 54 by 72 in here without, that would have included, instead of having that lean on there. That's, again, an afterthought, needed more space. Maybe we can, and again, it was kind of funny. So this was 96, 9,000. And again, a dirt floor, maybe a couple loads of gravel. And then there's some sand banks back here. So when the excavator came in, there used to be an old hog shed here. He kind of had to remove some of that and cave that bank a little bit and get the sand. And then we did a couple loads of gravel in the front. So there was maybe a few $100 there. But that lean-to, which we'll go out there, 16 feet by 72, the length of the building. Basically coming off, it's on the lower side. I remember putting in a few of the posts. We had some longer posts bought. I knew we were going to have to fill in a lot. It didn't take me long to realize, I think we only had maybe 3 posts, and then I realized maybe we shouldn't go this route. Maybe we should go a concrete wall. I just got thinking there's going to be an awful lot of grade here. What happens up here in the north, if you got soil up against anything, and here's a prime example, the frost will push the wall. My dad always said it's like a hydraulic jack. There's no preventing that. So we poured a wall, we had a company come in. So getting back to the whole story, so that whole part, 96 costed us about $9,000 using used steel, and we did build most all of it myself, hired a little bit of help from the youngsters that helped me with the roof. But this here lean-to costed me $9,000 in '09. Which of course today would be more. And then again, this laminated rafter, I guess you could say. Again, those were bought from the same company, but they, I think they're like 16 inches by a full 2 inches. It's like plywood, so very strong. And they could have probably spanned a lot further than they actually are too. This is all the room we had here.
And some of the obvious things when it comes to a lean-to is you run out of height really quick. And then also with the snow too, that's just even more hanging on your building.
Almost in the waterway of this valley up behind here again. So again, I would have loved to go more. Now I remember when I was putting this little part in the front. Now, right now, I don't think the 1066 would fit in here, but my 75 would clear this. The antenna hits, that's it. We're able to get in with that, but even my livestock trailer here does hit the, if I'm trying to maneuver it in here with the skid steer, I gotta watch how much I lift it up. So you're right, that's always, back in the day, that was always an afterthought. Big hip roof barn, let's put a lean on it, right? We already got one wall, it's economical, but then you kind of ruin the original part of it for ventilation purposes, lighting purposes, all those type of things. And you don't really get a lot out of it. A few years into it, and then it seems like it's never big enough.
That's a common story with anybody that builds a building, is it's never big enough. I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that it was too big. Even if they're heating it and all that, I don't think I've ever heard anybody say that it was too big.
It's all about economics, and of course when you build, and a lot of our concern was, okay, you know, you got property taxes, it's just a fact of life. And as soon as you do something like that, okay, more is that going to raise those up? And then that's kind of forever. It's not something that you can say, well, we'll just take the building down next year because we're not going to need it.
Yep. All right, well, there's all the main pole sheds in the yard. We're going to touch on some of the smaller structures, but in case this video is getting too long, I'm going to end it off here, and make sure to stay tuned for part 2, where we'll touch on some of the other buildings and then also that new shed that we get a lot of questions about. So stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching. We'll see you all in the next one.